Hello, and welcome to day 17 of the Azure Advent Calendar. My name is Kristopher Turner. I'm an Azure Customer Engineer with Microsoft, and I'm going to be talking about Azure Update Management today. So really quick, what is Azure Update Management? Basically, Azure Update Management is a solution within Azure Automation to help you manage operating system updates for Windows and Linux operating systems in Azure, on your on-premise machines, and as well as other cloud providers. I'm going to break this video up into a few different sections here. The first section, I'm going to demo how to set up update management manually. The second section, I'm going to kind of introduce how to do some of this within Azure policies. And then the third one, I'm going to demo some scripts that I've created to help deploy this at an enterprise level. So let's go ahead and start. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a Log Analytics workspace, and then we're going to create an automation account that goes along with this Log Analytics workspace. A real quick thing for anybody that's starting out fresh is there's some specific mappings you have to worry about when you're using certain services like update management, inventory, things like that, that within the automation account. That won't work if you don't have your automation account in a specific region and your Log Analytics workspace in a specific region. So what we're going to do today, we're going to set our stuff up where our Log Analytics workspace is going to be in East US, and our Azure Automation account is going to reside in the East US 2 region. That's pretty much how I set everything up, and except of course if we are using other regions or in other countries. But the first thing we're going to do is create our Log Analytics workspace. And I'm going to name this something that I could remember later so I can delete it without having any issues. It's going to go in this subscription. I am going to create a new Log Analytics resource group to hold this in my automation account. And then we're going to set this, of course, in East US and just keep it default. This is going to take some time here, a few seconds, and then we're going to move over to the automation account piece. Okay, so now we have our Log Analytics account. Next, we're going to create our automation account. Automation account will kind of keep the same general naming feature for my demo here. Same subscription. We're going to pop it in the same resource group. We're going to pop this on East US 2 and then click Create. And we'll take a few seconds for that to create. Okay, now our automation account is now created. Next, we're actually going to want to go and enable the update management service within the automation account. This is fairly easy. Just click on the automation account, go down to update management, and we're going to make sure that the Log Analytics workspace is correct. The actual subscription is correct. We're going to be using this solution net, and then we're going to make sure we check the right workspace location. All right, Log Analytics workspace. Click enable, and this takes a few minutes. And once it's done, we could actually go in and start enabling the agent on some of the VMs that we're going to be using, and continue on from there. Okay, so now we have update management actually enabled. Now we're going to go and actually configure the actual VM and the client itself to enable the agent on the client. There's several ways we could do this. One is one at a time, go to each VM, enable update management on it. You could also go to the VM view in Azure and select all your VMs, or you could actually configure it from within Update Management itself, and that way you catch existing VMs and you can catch any new VMs that are added to that specific log analytics workspace. So let me go ahead and show us the example here. So if we go to virtual machines, we'll have a list of all our virtual machines here. If we wanted to get, let's say we had 60, 70 machines within this subscription that we're looking at, we could actually just click them all, or click the ones that we want to add to the specific update management solution, and then we'll go up to services here. And here we could actually add it to one of three services: change tracking, inventory, or update management. If we hit update management, this will start configuring start the mechanism and the automation behind the agent being configured on each of these VMs. Each of these VMs. Another way to do it, of course, is to actually go into update management itself and just enable the management of all VMs that were within that specific log analytics workspace. And then that way, any new VM, of course, that is added to that log analytics workspace will then actually have the update management agent configured. And oops, sorry, wrong button. Basically, we go to manage machines, and then we'll select enable on all available and feature machines. So this will basically take any machine that is reporting to that specific log analytics workspace and enable that agent on that VM. It can take about 15 minutes, sometimes a little sooner, sometimes a little longer. All depends. You could actually add each one manually if you want to. There's some limitations here. It only lets you do a specific number of resource groups at one time. So let's say you had 50 resource groups or regions and stuff, and you could only select a few at a time. There's some kind of limitation here that they don't allow you to select them all. This is another route to go. The best route, if you want to do all this automated at one point, is to just go ahead and enable for all machines currently and all future machines. And we're going to do this. And this is going to take some time here. Actually, not too much time, but it's going to take enough time that I'm going to put the magic pause on the video, and I'll be right back. Okay, the one thing I did forget real fast is to actually connect all these VMs to our log analytics workspace. If we would have came over to our virtual machine, to our virtual machine section here, blade, and then we would have added them that direction, that would have actually kicked off a mechanism to add them to our log analytics group. Another way to add them to the log analytics group is to log analytics workspace, sorry, is to actually go into the workspace itself and go down to the virtual machines, and you'll see that none of our machines are currently connected to a log analytics workspace. Like I had mentioned, if we had gone and enabled each VM separately, or if we had gone into update management and added a machine, this mechanism would have kicked off on its own. There's a way to manually connect them this way. I'll do these for now. This is one way to do it. The other way to do it, of course, is to enable the solution, of course, via PowerShell script, which I'm going to show in a minute, or actually just come in here and do them in a big mass deployment here as well. So since I'm already here, let's go ahead and just go ahead and do this now just to show you and to demo this section. We'll just click on Update Management. This basically takes us to the same screen that we were inside Update Management earlier. We're going to go to auto configure log analytics workspaces based off the subscription and the location, and then we're going to hit enable. We could actually customize this and choose what log analytics group we want, but we're basically going to let it auto do this for now. This will enable it. Excuse me, sorry for the cough. And just as if we were doing it within adding these machines to the log analytics workspace from that other blade, this will do the same same process as well. The only piece that we do want to make sure is that, of course, we got to make sure we have every location and enable it with this restriction, or with this route as well. Okay, so right now we have, of course, our log analytics workspace created. We have our automation account created. We have update management service enabled on that automation account. We have our VMs now being now connected to that log analytics workspace. At this point, machines will start appearing here within about 15 minutes. As you can see, that we're getting alerts at the top that these VMs that we connected are now successfully connected to that log analytics workspace. A few minutes later, 15 minutes, we should be able to see this. The machines start reporting compliance if everything works out. There are going to be some bumps in the road if you're dealing with a lot of VMs. Some of the agents might not install properly, or you might have some misconfigurations that you have to troubleshoot. A lot of it is just that I found is you just remove it from the log analytics workspace, and then it uninstalls the unconfigures the agent. Then you just add it back. You connect it back to the log analytics workspace, and everything is configured correctly. Those are rare, but they do happen. The next step is to actually deploy create deployment schedules, and that's what we'll go and do right now. Okay, so with deployment schedules, there's two different ways we could do a deployment schedule. Of course, there's going to be a deployment schedule for Windows machines and a deployment schedule uh, for Windows and Linux machines. Two separate ones. There's some slight differences in how the updates are, where the updates come from and stuff. That the configurations are slightly different. Also, deployment schedules could actually be based off of either static groups, where you're actually manually telling the deployment schedule, this is the group of computers you want, or you could base them off of Azure queries that are dynamic, and that's what we're going to kind of do today. I'll kind of show you how to create a dynamic group that's based off an Azure query. So basically, an update management, we're going to create a scheduled update deployment. We're going to do something simple. I'm going to name this one Windows updates Saturday night reboot. I mean, that's in the real world, I'd have a different name, something a little more organized. But for us here, we're going to do Windows. This is where I was talking about if we're going to do by groups or if we're going to do by machines. If we wanted to do a kind of static group, we would click here and then add the machine. If we wanted to do a dynamic group, we would create a dynamic group here. There's one thing I like to call out now that in the past, when you use update management to update machines in Azure, or if you used it to actually update machines like on premises with like Azure Stack, or even anything on premises, or even in other clouds, um, those resources did not show up as a resource in Azure, so you couldn't create dynamic groups um, with those in. You'd have to manually add them to a static group. But now with the availability of Azure Arc and being able to manage on-premises resources running in Azure Stack or running in VMware or even running in AWS, you now could those resources are now an Azure resource, and you could do many things like assign policies, and for one thing, do update management and assign them to dynamic groups. I know Thomas Maurer did a forgive me for mispronouncing your name there, buddy, but he did a Azure Arc session earlier in the Azure Advent Calendar. Very good to listen to and watch. So I'm going to create a quick group. I'm going to stop talking because we don't want to keep you too long here. We're going to base it off of this subscription for now, but you can select all subscriptions. Um, we're not going to really tell what resource group you can get nitty gritty you want to. We're not going to care about locations. You might, when you're talking about locations based on, Europe versus US versus Asia and things like that, and having to worry about um, data going back and forth if you had that specific concern. But for this demo, we're going to base them off of tags. But right now, we actually don't have a tag created. So I'm going to back out of this, and I'm going to show you how to create a tag, which in the future we're going to actually use Azure Policy to create these tags in our demo coming up. But for now, we're going to go actually back up and create a tag that we could use in here, and then show you how to create a dynamic group or based off of an Azure query. Okay, so I'm going to speed this up a little bit because we don't want to take a lot of time in this. We're just going to go to virtual machines. We're going to go and ignore this configuration we did. We're just going to go to any one of these machines. It doesn't really matter which one. This is just for demo purposes. We're going to create a new tag. Um, I don't know. We're going to call this update management, and we're going to have a value of Saturday or something. In real world, you'll have a lot more detailed values and probably better naming scheme. But for this demo, we're just going to use this for now. So now we have this Windows VM 01 with that update management tag as of Saturday. We're going to go back over to our update management um, solution here. We're going to create a static. I'm going to have static. We're going to create a scheduled deployment. Windows OS Saturday. No reboot or something. Actually, we're going to force the reboot because we're going to create a group. Of course, I'm going to select that. No resources grouped, no locations. We're going to go ahead and create a filter. Choose by filter. Okay. And to the joys of magic video editing, it, it does take a few seconds for that tag to populate. So I kind of waited a little bit, about 3 minutes, and then our tag and our tag value does now show up. As you can see, we have the update management tag, and we're going to choose that one. So this group is going to basically be a dynamic group based off of any machine that has this tag of Saturday. If we hit preview, we should be able to see the one machine that we've actually tagged already. If you have multiple tags, it should show up. We're going to hit add. This creates the dynamic group now, and it takes a few seconds here. We all know how fun it takes. We're going to hit OK. We now have a dynamic group created. Update classifications. You can kind of granular here. You could tell it what you want here, but for this demo, I'm just going to keep all 8. We could actually exclude some updates if we needed to. For the schedule needs to be within, I think, 30 minutes. So if you're going to build a schedule out, it has to be it has to be longer out, farther out than 30 minutes of the actual schedule. So if I try to do this now, being that it's 12:01 now here in beautiful Greece, where I'm at right now, I'm looking out the window as I'm doing this for you guys. But we're going to do it based off, usually we're going to go off UTC time, things like that. But for now, I'm going to keep it at Eastern European time. This is going to be reoccurring. Let's see, it's going to be on a Saturday night, so make sure we got Saturday night. We're going to make sure that it's Saturday evening. If this was UTC time, it'd be a little more thinking and think in my head to do because I'm not very good at UTC time. So let's just say 5:30 p.m. on Saturdays. This schedule is going to run. We don't want to do it every Saturday. I mean, you could, but you don't want to. We're gonna kind of scale it out a little bit, so it's going to run every um, um, sorry, my brain is dead. So we're gonna basically do kind of like a follow best practices, I guess you want to call it, for patching, however you want to call it. But when I was a config manager admin, we'd always have our UAT of our environments go, then our dev environments and all that other fun stuff. But we're going to move this over to a week. We're going to do it every fourth week, and we're going to do, actually, let's just do it for the fun of it, every second week, and we're going to do it Wednesday. So patch Tuesday, and then the next Wednesday night it's going to go. It's not going to expire. We're going to hit OK. So every Saturday, every second Saturday of the month. Actually, that's a good point, huh? It's going to be every second Saturday, because the schedules for Saturday. This update management piece is going to run. We could actually create some pre and post scripts, things you might want to, PowerShell scripts or some kind of script that's going to maybe shut down or drain a cluster or drain a node out of a cluster, um, send a notification to Teams, Slack, etc. Um, you get pretty creative with these pre and post scripts. Maintenance windows, 120 minutes should be okay. Maybe not, depending on how often you patch. And then, of course, we're going to do reboot if required. There's also other options where you get forced to reboot, it never reboots, or only reboot in case you want to make sure all your machines are rebooted. We're going to create this deployment group, and now we have a deployment group, and we're ready to basically sit there and let our Azure environment patch itself. We get a little more granular, break up the different patching schedules, deployment schedules, and things like that. And the good thing is now is this solution is getting better. There's some pros and cons to it. I don't think it's 100% awesome yet, but it does great and it does a good enough job to keep your Azure environment patched. There's some caveats. It doesn't do like Windows 10 machines yet. It will show the compliance of Windows 10 machine. It doesn't do Windows 2008, of course, 2008 or 2. There's some Linux versions that it's not going to work on, but as long as you have the newest, latest, greatest OS, it should work for us. Okay, so we basically manually deployed or manually configured update management to be able to update all our Azure VMs and stuff it to this point. There's a few other things that we would probably want to do. There's some configurations on the VMs that you might want to hit. Things like you might want to configure the disable of automatic installation using either PowerShell scripts or GPOs if you still use GPOs, or even the Azure Policy guest configuration. You could use those tools to be able to deploy some of these configuration changes on your VMs. The disabling automatic installation means it's just not going to allow that VM to, if it sees an update, to automatically install it. You don't want your production workloads installing updates randomly. You could one of the other configurations that you want to actually do to your VMs, at least I suggest, is pre-download the updates. So if an update is available, it's going to cache that down. It's going to download and cache that update. So when it does hit that maintenance window, the deployment schedule starts. Instead of having to wait for it to download, it will automatically have it, and your maintenance windows will be a lot smaller. There's also the configuration of the Microsoft products. Like, do you want third party, or do you want things like SQL updates to come down and things like that as well that you're going to want to kind of enable as well. Okay, so let's kind of just do a quick overview of everything that we did manually real fast. We created the log analytics workspace. We created the automation account. We enabled update management service solution on the automation account. We then ahead and went and configured the agents on those VMs using various different methods, either by going into the virtual machine blade, enabling the service, or actually just connecting them to the log analytics workspace. We enabled automation account to basically configure that agent for any machines being added to that log analytics workspace as well. We talked a little bit about what we should do to configure our VMs, how do we create deployment schedules, and I kind of showed you about the static versus dynamic. Um, Now what I want to kind of show you in the little bit of time that we have left and talk about is what are you going to do to catch machines that are deployed after you deploy the solution. So you've got the solution deployed right now. If Bob comes along and deploys another 100 VMs, um, those VMs are not going to really have update management solution enabled um, because they're not going to be part of a log analytics workspace that is connected to that automation account that has update management service installed. So the best solution is to start using Azure policies. Azure policy um, has excuse me for my coughing. We have a couple different policies that we could use to help kind of automate things like assigning tags. Uh, there is a policy where you could add a tag or replace a tag that does not exist, or maybe the tag exists but the value is incorrect. Um, that way, any new machine coming in will automatically get a tag called update management and maybe something like default, and it's going to fall into a default group um, that will get patched, um, and it'll be up to the owner of that resource group or application or however you manage your organization to go in and change those tags. Um, or at least when you run reports, you'll know, hey, you got 50 machines that are let's set as default tag for this value of this tag. So then you'll know that these machines are there, and you could change that tag either using, of course, policy or script. The best way to use is Azure Policy. Also, you want to take advantage of um, Azure Policy to deploy the Log Analytics Monitoring Agent and also provision that Log Analytics Monitoring Agent. So anytime a machine comes online within that subscription, um, that policy is going to um, enable log analytics monitoring agent, and it's also going to configure it to point to the right log analytics workspace. That way, and as soon as that process is in place, and you already have your update management piece configured to automatically configure the agent on that machine. So within a few, 30, 45 minutes of the machine coming online and starting to get policy, that machine should now at least be part of update management. And that way your solution is pretty much not a fail safe, but you're patching machines and not having to worry about it and not having to always constantly add machines to update management. So there's a lot of things that you can do to help automate this feature. You can also run runbooks as well to help do this as well, but it's the best way to kind of focus on Azure Policy and Azure Policy guest configuration. Those two solutions will be a lifesaver for you when it comes to maintaining um, updates, maintaining governance, things like that. Okay, so before I wrap it up here, there's about three things I want to talk to you about really fast. The first one is Azure Monitor workbooks. There's a good workbook out there by Billy York that he has created that has a heat map that will show which VMs are not compliant and compliant. And then when you click on it, it kind of drills down to what updates are installed. It also has some good charts that show Linux updates and which VMs might not be updated, and Windows updates and which Windows VMs are not updated. You could actually configure yourself to do what you wanted to do, but I would highly recommend looking up Billy York and his Azure Automation Update Management workbook. It's a very good workbook, and it's a very nice little dashboard to have for your management team to look at and be amazed at the pretty graphs. Second one to do, of course, is when you're doing this in an environment where you need to have alerting, Azure Monitor and create alerts so you get alerted on your deployment schedules if they failed, if they were successful, things like that. And the third thing I was going to talk to you about was um, being able to deploy this in a larger enterprise environment, especially if you're multiple subscriptions and you don't want to have to manually do this because it will be a pain. I do have some scripts that I wrote that will help with deploying multiple deployment schedules across uh, multiple subscriptions and enabling um, the update management solution on the automation account automatically, creating the automation account, of course, creating the log analytics workspace automatically for you, and it also will uh, enable the VMs to be controlled by that log analytics workspace, and pretty much everything's automated. It's via PowerShell script, and then of course you fall back on your Azure Policy to make sure that you're catching new VMs just like you should in the first place. Okay, so I'm gonna just speed through these scripts really fast. You could grab them from my GitHub, github.com / Kristopher J Turner, or actually I think I also have them at / Country Cloud Boy. I'll be working on them one here and there, trying to improve them. They're kind of rough, so please don't make fun of them. But in a nutshell, as I mentioned earlier, it's going to deploy um, it's going to deploy the log analytics workspace. It's going to deploy the automation account. It's going to enable actually it's going to enable data management, uh, change control, and then our change management, and also the inventory control services for you as well, because those three services together are should kind of be enabled. They're free, minus of course the log analytics uh, logs that are going to be collected. Um, then that's going to enable the VMs to be controlled by that log analytics workspace. It's going to then of course enable and provision update management for you, and it's going to also tag all your VMs for you, um, and it's going to pull from an Excel or a CSV file. And within that CSV file, it's going to pull information like what is the tag, what is the tag value, um, different things that it's going to ask you for. You could look at it and kind of and change those settings from within that CSV. That way you don't have to always go in and edit the actual PowerShell scripts every time. And then of course it's going to configure the Windows Update agent with some of those settings that I mentioned earlier. And then it's going to deploy those deployment schedules based off of the Azure queries to make them dynamic for you. And then of course you want to go back and deploy some of those Azure policies. That way you catch any new VM. Um, the scripts will be located, of course, at my GitHub that I mentioned earlier. If you have any questions, you could go ahead and reach out to me at Kristopher J on Twitter, and I should be able to reply to you. Hopefully, I'll reply in a timely manner for you. But I want to kind of wrap this up. I went a little over. I hope that you got something out of this. I'm hoping you're enjoying your holidays. And I want to thank you for spending some time listening to me and talking about Azure Update Management. And hopefully you have a happy holiday. Thank you.